What's up, guys? It's Toad back with you. As always, it is Monday morning, January 27th. I got two plays today, both in college basketball. Kind of a short card today. 2-1 yesterday. Philadelphia Eagles, easy win. I mean, you could say what you want about the reffing in that game. I think it was worse than the Chiefs game. The Eagles had the game either way, though. I mean, they ran away with it. Saquon Barkley did a lot of damage, although I think he actually didn't get over his yardage total because it was so high. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe he did. He did get over 100 yards. But I think the total line on that, I think, was even higher than that, which is crazy. Although I could be wrong about that. You can correct me on that. I was obviously wrong about it being a low-scoring game. But I had the side, Philadelphia Eagles, easy win on that one. Things got a little bit tense with Washington trying to dive over the line to stop the tush push. I mean, say what you want about the tush push. I think it's stupid as well. I'm not a fan of the Eagles. I'm not a fan of either team in the Super Bowl, but we're just trying to win money here, man. So that was that game. The rookie quarterback in that situation, I didn't think was going to get the job done, and Philadelphia ran away with the game. The other game, obviously, very close game between the Bills and the Chiefs. There are a few plays that people are really complaining about. There was that one where the Chiefs got down in scoring position, I think late in the first half maybe, and they wound up taking a 21-10 lead, I think, on this particular drive, and then gave up a touchdown almost immediately after that. So it was 21-16 going into the half after the Bills failed on a two-point conversion. But this drive, it was the catch, basically, where I think it was Xavier Worthy had the catch, and it was not a catch. I mean, it hit the ground. It was ruled a catch on the field. It was almost a simultaneous catch between him and the defender. I saw people arguing that it should have been an interception. I don't think so. I think it should have been ruled incomplete. I mean, the ball clearly hit the ground, but they didn't overturn the initial call, citing not enough evidence. I thought there was clear evidence that it hit the ground, enough evidence to say that it was an incomplete pass, and it was ruled complete anyway. And I don't remember what down that was on. It gave the Chiefs like a new set of downs, I think. Maybe they still would have scored a touchdown anyway. I'm not sure what down it was. If it was going to be fourth down otherwise, then yeah, obviously they would have wound up kicking the field goal instead. So that would have had a difference in that respect. I don't know. I would have to go look at that again. But yeah, that was a weird one. That call didn't really totally make sense. And then also, like right before the 2-minute warning in the second quarter, the Chiefs had the ball, and the refs were saying, oh, there's like a slight fraction of a difference off between the play clock and the game clock. So the Chiefs are going to have to snap the ball before this. So the Chiefs let it wind all the way down anyway, and I was thinking, okay, the Chiefs are going to have to call a timeout here if that's what they want to do. They never called the timeout, and it was never a delay game, even though the refs had just said the Chiefs have to snap the ball because the play clock is going to expire before the game clock goes down to 2 minutes. And no, it was just never called. Nothing even happened. And the commentators, I think I just said refs again, the commentators had said that, and then they never even said anything after that. That was really bizarre. And then everybody's complaining about the fourth down placement on the Bills, kind of the last gasp. Well, they did have one more chance if they were able to stop. They were going to have one more chance if they were able to stop the Chiefs, which they didn't. But on the fourth down play, it was actually, there were two different fourth down plays. What am I saying? It was the fourth down play prior to that. I think the Bills, turned it over twice in a row on fourth down. The time before that one, it was like fourth and short. People were first saying that, I think it was it Kincaid? It was one of the tight ends, I think, saying that he got the first down. On that play, I don't think he did. Because he hit the ground and then he kind of moved forward a little bit after he got down on the ground. So people were showing that with the television marker. I don't think that play was actually a first down. The Josh Allen run that everybody's complaining about on fourth down, it's possible that he got past the line. That one I'm not really sure. Of course, they spotted it. Of course, they gave the Chiefs the spot because that's what the refs do. They said he was short and then not enough evidence to overturn it. I do agree that there wasn't enough evidence to overturn that one. That one was really, really close. He may have gotten it. It was just really hard to tell. And from the angle that you had looking right down the line, it was from behind Allen, so you couldn't see where the ball actually was. You could only see his back. So that one was very difficult. But, yeah, there were definitely some questionable calls going on there. in favor of the Chiefs. Although I did get both of my picks right in my pick'em pool. Now, to be in the money, I think basically if I get the Super Bowl right, I think I'm going to be in the money. So we'll see how that goes. Initial read, actually, it looks like the public is kind of coming in on the Eagles, and the line moved up a little bit on the Chiefs. So, oh my God, does that mean I lean to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl? Maybe. I don't know if I'm actually going to play the side in that one, but man. So, anyway, yeah, I got the Eagles right. My day started out okay with Indiana covering as well. That was a win for me. They should have won the game outright, probably. I mean, Indiana had the lead in that game, and they were trailing for parts of it, and then they had the lead, I think, by 4 or 5 in the final minute, and they blew the entire thing, and they missed the front end of a 1-and-1, I think, and then gave up a 3 when they could have intentionally fouled because they had a foul to give, so they could have prevented the 3, but that didn't happen. Just bad game management, bad free throw shooting from Indiana there. They'll end up losing the game to Maryland, but only by 1, so Indiana still covered for me. Yes, correct. This is all vomit-worthy, Tim. And then I had the loss was on the Utah Hockey Club. I mean, they just suck. I forgot to mention, by the way, my previous hockey loss on the St. Louis Blues. If you look at that game statistically, the Blues totally dominated Dallas. I will just put it out there because I'm mad. The Blues had like 30-something shots to 18, something like that. They had way more hits, and they had the face-off percentage as well. I mean, that one was just really probably a game I shouldn't have lost. Yesterday, not so much. I mean, I don't think Utah played that well yesterday. So, 2-1 day. Let's talk about today. We got college basketball. As I said, both of my plays are in college basketball. We do have some decent games today, some bigger conference games here. I will say you may consider Troy to be in a letdown spot, by the way, because they just got their revenge against South Alabama. Big win against South Alabama, who was atop the Sun Belt there, but Southern Miss is terrible, and Troy's laying double digits here, so I don't want anything to do with this game, but I am pointing it out. It has gone down from 12 to 11, so some money may be actually agreeing with me that it is a letdown spot, and you may want to look to fade Troy there. Penn State is at Michigan. There wasn't much of a situational angle that I could see on this one. Penn State did just lose at Iowa, which, not the greatest loss, but I mean, it's a tough place to play to go in and face Iowa, and that was definitely an up and down the court type of game. Both teams like to play fast. Now they are facing a second straight road game at Michigan, and Michigan, yeah, they're coming off a big game against Purdue, but they actually got drilled by Purdue. They absolutely got drilled by Purdue is what I meant to say. So Michigan, even though that was a big game that you get up for, I think the fact that they lost by 25 points, or 27 points, excuse me, I can never do math anymore, and it doesn't look good at all. I think that probably is going to have Michigan refocused in this game, even though it was a loss to a big opponent. If you lose by that type of margin, I think you're going to be focused. Michigan is up from 8 to 8.5, so I would agree with the line moving that one towards the Michigan side in this one. Not a strong lean, but I think they are in a bounce-back spot, whereas Penn State, second straight road game after a fast-paced, close game in the previous one, so I think Michigan probably is the better rested and maybe the more focused team coming into this one. So that's the way I look at that one. Iowa at Ohio State in the other Big Ten game here. Yeah, this is a game that I have a play on. This is a simple one. This is a letdown spot, man. So I'm going to play Iowa plus 8 in this one. Again, yes, you again, sir. Iowa plus 8 is going to be the play here. And this line might actually go up even further. It's gone up from 7 to 7.5 with juice, or 8, but Iowa does have 50% of tickets, 93% of the cash right now. So I don't know if the line is going to continue to go up or not, but anything above like 7.5 or above, I think is fine, because as I always say, 7 is the key number in basketball. It's when you hit the 3 possession threshold and you stop intentionally fouling. So I like Iowa in this, and I don't love the Ken Palm numbers in this one. So the reasoning for that is that, oh God, I was checking my own stream here, just making sure that I have audio and whatever, making sure that you can hear me. Tim, you can hear me, right? Usually I have it up and I check, but all right. Anyway, the Ken Palm numbers I don't love on Iowa here. So Iowa's been like a decently lucky team at 192nd in the country. They've played a decently tough schedule. Not a whole lot else you can glean from any of this. very fast-paced team at 31. Ohio State is definitely the better team, and they've been very unlucky, as Ken Baum has shown you. 308th in luck in the country, so very unlucky. They're underperforming. They face the 8th toughest schedule, so Ohio State has good Ken Baum metrics for maybe finding some value on Ohio State. Just in this game, I don't actually think so. And Iowa is the better offense at the very least at 23rd. Ohio State at 42nd in offensive efficiency. Ohio State's the better defense. They play like kind of a mid-tempo at 181st. So yeah, they're probably going to try to slow down Iowa a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be enough that's going to completely throw Iowa out of their game here. And as I'm going to point out in a minute, Ohio State's in a huge letdown spot, which is the main reason for playing this one. But Ohio State, also when you have the better defensive team rather than the offensive team, you want to look to play better defensive teams, especially when they're getting points or when it's like a close line. But when they're laying points like this and they're more of a defensive team, it's a little bit more difficult for that defensive team to actually cover a big number as a favorite like this. I mean, I think the number is warranted. I don't know what Ken Baum has this line at as far as like what the game is. I didn't even look because I just said, oh, this is a letdown spot. I'm going to play it. He does have this right at 8, so I'm not too concerned about that. So the line looks like it's right where it should be pretty much. But again, this is a huge letdown spot for Ohio State, man. This is why I'm fading them. They just went into Purdue and beat Purdue, and I was on Ohio State in that one. They'd come off an ugly loss to Indiana, which I was on Indiana in that game too. So 3 straight games I'm going to be on. I'm going to be involved in Ohio State games, and I'm zigzagging around where I faded them against Indiana after they had tough games against Oregon and Wisconsin and with Purdue up ahead. Then I played them after that ugly loss against Indiana. I played them against Purdue. They beat Purdue, and then I'm going to look to fade them again here. So fade, play on, and then fade again, man. A lot of times this is what you want to do when you get your like gauge on that team and your gauge is really good on that team. A lot of times you're going to find yourself being on the team one day, and then if you're right and they have a good game like you think they do, then they're going to be in like the letdown spot the next game. And that's what I think is going to happen here against Iowa. I don't know if they're going to totally pay attention to this Iowa team that has kind of a middling record, even though Ohio State's is actually pretty middling as well. But I think Iowa's in a decent spot to show up here. They beat Penn State, as I mentioned a little while ago, but that broke a 3-game loss streak for them, so that wasn't a great loss streak, namely this game against Minnesota, where I lost on Iowa in that one, and Iowa should have won that game just on the surface as far as how that game set up, and they did not play well in that game against Minnesota, who was in a huge letdown spot after beating Michigan. But whatever the case, Iowa bounced back after that, and they won barely against Penn State. So now I do think that'll give them some momentum coming to this game, and I do expect them to show up and be focused coming to this game. As I said, I don't think Ohio State's pacing disparity is enough that it's really going to totally take over the game like this. So I will take the points with Iowa in that one. That's my first play. Next up, well, I mean, we do have this battle in North Carolina here, but Duke is a massive favorite, although Duke is coming off that close call against Wake Forest. So does that mean they're going to be refocused? I don't know. I'm going to look to fade Wake Forest whenever they play next, because Wake Forest had that game, man. They were winning by like 5 or 6 points with like several minutes left in the game, and they wound up blowing the game, and they hung in there against Wake. They played a really tough, or against Duke. Wake played a really tough game there. So Duke is coming off of that. I think that might serve to refocus Duke a little bit, although then again, they do have North Carolina up next, and that's a bigger North Carolina rivalry, even though North Carolina is down this year. NC State is also not doing well this year, so it is possible that Duke still doesn't totally focus on this game against NC State between 2 other North Carolina rivals that are actually both better than NC State are this year. NC State, I mean, you know they're going to show up. I mean, it's just a matter of, is Duke way too much better than NC State is, that so much so they can just kind of name the score? I don't know. NC State's coming up that not great loss to SMU, really. They're on a big loss streak here. They're not playing well, but they may have been looking ahead to Duke. And SMU, I think, was coming off kind of an ugly loss, so they were in like a bounce-back mode in that game. I mentioned that on Saturday. NC State may have been looking ahead to this game against Duke, but Duke is a 21-point favorite, down from 22.5 to 21.5, excuse me. So the line has gone down a little bit. They are still a huge favorite. I mean, it's a tough read, man. I mean, NC State probably has a little bit more reason to show up in this one just because they are the little brother. Duke is the team with the target on their back, but still, I'm not going to do it. I mean, Duke could kind of just easily name the score in this one if they really wanted to. Then we do have UCLA at USC in the former Pac-12 battle. UCLA sitting at a 1-point favorite with 50% of tickets, but 93% of the cash is on the other side on USC. So money coming in on USC. It's a tough read, man. Situationally, it would kind of lead me to believe that UCLA is kind of in a focused spot here, even though it is a second straight road game. They were just up in Seattle, and they didn't play that well against Washington. I played Washington in that game, and unfortunately, Washington blew the early lead, and then they were way behind, and they did come back, and they pushed for me, but I thought it was going to be a winning play on Washington. Their UCLA had beaten Wisconsin the game before that, which was a big win. They didn't play as well against Washington. Now they do have USC, so they may refocus. Just part of my handicap on that Washington game was that they would be looking ahead to USC because it's a big Southern Cal rivalry game. But then again, they do have Oregon and Michigan State up next, which are also big games. Oregon is not revenge, actually, because UCLA actually beat them in their own place. It is going to be a big revenge game for Oregon, but both teams, I think, could be looking ahead to that game a little bit. And this is a second straight road game for UCLA, having to go from Seattle all the way back down to Southern Cal. USC, though, the travel spot isn't that great for them either. They just went into Lincoln, Nebraska, and beat Nebraska off of losing to Wisconsin. So that was a big win for USC as an underdog at Nebraska. Big win. Now they're coming home. They do have Michigan State up next, but I think USC is the less likely of the two teams to overlook their opponent here, though. Like, UCLA is the bigger brother in Southern Cal, man. In the sport of basketball, that's just the way it is. UCLA has the bigger name recognition. So it would lead me to agree with the market in this one. I'd agree with the USC side slightly, but obviously the situation kind of sets up, I think, almost more advantageously for UCLA slightly. But again, I do think USC is going to show up in this game. Both teams probably should, but I think it means a little bit more to USC. And then the public is also going to look at this and think, well, wait a minute. USC just lost badly at home to Wisconsin, and UCLA beat Wisconsin at home. So this is easy, right? It's just pick the winner. Obviously, you pick UCLA, right? So I would say not so fast as far as that's concerned as well. So looks like almost too easy to take UCLA in this game as far as like the public's view of this game would be concerned. UCLA, the team with the better record, and known to be the better basketball team. So slightly into the USC side in that one, not a play, but what is a play for me, Arizona -1. We have one of these situations, man, where you have not only a ranked team, but a highly ranked team against an unranked team, and that highly ranked team is actually an underdog. And that's something that should catch your eye, man, because I think the public is going to look at this and think, wait a minute, Iowa State's number 3 in the country. Arizona's got 6 losses, although they do only have 1 loss in conference, and so does Iowa State. Like, what gives, right? It looks so easy to just take Iowa State. You're getting points with this team that's only lost twice on the entire season against a team that has 6 losses and isn't ranked. And Iowa State's ranked as one of the best teams in the country, and they are probably like a top several team in the country. But in this spot, I think the spot and the line is indicating that you should take Arizona. Arizona, as I've been saying, is better than the record would indicate, and they're starting to play that way since Big 12 play started, even though they are new to the Big 12, which I'll mention in a second. Arizona's flipped from a 1-point dog to a 1-point favorite with juice, 67% of tickets, 87% of the cash on them. So the line has moved in the direction of Arizona, so in my direction, because I agree with it. There's not a whole lot of a situational angle here. As Iowa State, they're coming off a win over Arizona State, which is kind of whatever, but it is a second straight road game for Iowa State, and Iowa State having to play in the Arizonas, that's not something they're familiar with, man. So Iowa State, because the Arizona teams are new to the Big 12, they're not used to playing these Arizona road trips here. They have to play both Arizona teams back-to-back and having to play the tougher of the two teams as the second team on the road trip here. So second straight road game. It's not that easy to do. I would like this more if Iowa State was coming off a bigger win or if they had a bigger opponent coming up next, but I still like this because it is a second straight road game. You know Iowa State is going to have a target on their back, man. And Arizona, like I said, they're playing well since conference play started. They had that one loss in there to Texas Tech where I was on Texas Tech in that one. I thought it was a bad spot for Arizona. I thought Texas Tech was going to grind the game down to a halt, which Arizona does not want to do. And I was right about that one. And then Arizona bounced back, and they just kind of coasted through two bad teams, Oklahoma State and Colorado. Easy wins, and now they're just staying at home after that win. So the travel spot is a lot better for Arizona here, and they get basically their game of the year up to this point, man. They haven't faced a bigger team except for Duke, I guess, which they lost. So they really could be getting a statement win here if they're able to win this game, man. They have not faced a bigger opponent than this year except for Duke. And again, they lost that game, so they don't have that big win yet. And since conference play started, they have not played that like upper echelon team yet. So this game really, I think, means something to Arizona, whereas Iowa State's already played at least one of those games against Kansas. So it does mean they're a little bit more battle-tested, but still, it's not like Arizona's not battle-tested. As, they did face Duke, like I said, Wisconsin, UCLA. I mean, it's not like they faced absolute nobodies. So I like Arizona for all those reasons. Unfamiliar venue for Iowa State as well. And as far as the speed is concerned, both teams play fast. Arizona plays, I think, even faster than Iowa State, but there's not going to be that much of a disparity there as far as that's concerned. Both teams do like to play fast, so it's not going to really throw off Iowa State that much. But I think Arizona likes to play even faster than Iowa State does. Arizona is a good team, man. Ken Baum has them at 17th in the country, and he has them 293rd in luck. So even though he has both teams actually, he's saying that both teams are actually underperforming a little bit, but Arizona, even more so, and they face the 20th toughest schedule in the country, so Arizona's got a little bit better metrics on the luck index and on the strength of schedule there. Iowa State's the better team on both sides of the ball, but not by a whole lot. I do think Ken Baum does have Iowa State winning this game, though, but it is still kind of like a pick-the-winner situation where it's one team winning one way or the other by 1 or 2 points, so I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna play Arizona in that one for those reasons. Now let's move on to NHL. I guess we'll go to next. Let's see what we got going on with NHL. Not a huge NHL slate here. Not a whole lot of games that are really that big, to be honest. I don't even know if I want to hit any of these games, really. I don't know if any of these games are really that big necessarily. I mean, I don't know. Vancouver and St. Louis, maybe the game that's kind of the only game that had any interest to me at all, just because Vancouver just beat Washington, and they were coming off losing to Edmonton in that game where that was the revenge spot for Edmonton after the suspension game where all hell broke loose, and Vancouver won the game, and I was on Vancouver in that game. Now Vancouver coming off their most recent 2 games, losing in that revenge spot, the Edmonton revenge spot, and then they bounced back and they beat Washington. So that is a huge win. So it could be a letdown spot for Vancouver, but then again, they're starting a road trip, so I don't really want to play against them when they're starting a road trip, and it could still be potentially a focus spot for them to try to get the road trip off right. St. Louis is coming off that game where I said they should have won this game for me, man, against Dallas. St. Louis completely outplayed them, 33-19 in shots, 38-21 in hits, 55.2% face-off percentage. No clue how St. Louis didn't even score at all in that game. They lost for me, but after a tough game like that, I don't know that I want to play St. Louis either here for that reason, so I will just stay away, but that was the one game that kind of had any interest to me at all. St. Louis is actually down from -120 to -116 and have 94% of tickets and only 89% of the cash. That is wild. I've not Minnesota wild, but I don't understand how St. Louis would be the public team in that game, and the line is reverse moving against them. That just seems bizarre to me, man. I don't get it, but not like a great hockey slate for the hockey fans today. And then we got NBA. We have a decent-sized NBA card, and I just have not really found an angle where I totally want to get involved in this NBA card, unfortunately. I know, because I like playing NBA. It's been my best sport, but over the last, really like over my entire career doing this, but I just don't see as much of an angle. I could see fading the Lakers. I mean, the Lakers just beat the Celtics, and then they did not suffer the letdown, and they beat me on Saturday with I had Golden State. That was bad. Golden State lost. LA, another big win there against Golden State to technically start the road trip, and now they have to fly cross country to Charlotte, and they do have Philadelphia up next. And Philadelphia, at least, is a team that carries way more name recognition behind them, so that is a bigger game. So it's a little bit of a sandwich spot here for the Lakers, in my opinion. So I would look to play the Charlotte side in this one. I'm not going to quite do it, though. Charlotte's coming off a blowout win over the New Orleans Pelicans, and the Pelicans did have most of their guys back in that game. I think they were without Murray in that game, though, and Ingram is still hurt. But they did have Zion, McCollum, Trey Murphy the third, I think something the third. I think they all played in that game. But Charlotte, I mean, when you beat anybody like that by 31 points, I think you're going to be feeling a little bit high on yourselves as well. Though then again, you have the LA Lakers and LeBron coming into your place. You're probably going to be a little bit focused on that game anyway. The Lakers are down from 6-6 with reduced juice. They do have 77% of tickets, 90% of the cash. But I do think they're going to be public, and we're going to see a little bit of line movement coming against them there. So I do agree with the Charlotte side. Not a play for me, though. Just out. What's up, man? Bet everything on the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. I agree with that side right now. I don't know that it's going to be that strong for me. I'm gonna have some props. There are some props that I just play blindly in the Super Bowl anyway, which I know is boring, but they are money makers, so I will at least have those going on when I talk about the Super Bowl. Detroit is at Cleveland. Cleveland's returning home. No, they already returned home from the road. What am I saying? So they already returned home from a short road trip, but they lost to Houston again in a revenge spot. And I had mentioned the way that game's set up. Houston actually had more rest in that game because Houston didn't have a game mixed in between the two games against Cleveland. So Houston got the home-and-home sweep against Cleveland. Couple of big games there for both teams. So Cleveland's coming off of that. I don't know, man. I mean, it's a third game in 4 days for Cleveland. The first game was on the road. It's not the easiest spot for Cleveland, in my opinion, so I don't know. Detroit's coming off losing to Orlando, so maybe they were looking ahead to this. Maybe they'll want to bounce back. That was a tough game against Orlando, though. Now they are facing a fourth straight road game, so I don't want to get involved in this game either. The Cavs are a huge favorite, up from 10 to 10.5 with reduced juice. So 69% of tickets, 84% of the cash. So it does look like some of the money is coming in on the Cavs side to bounce back from those big games there. I don't know. I don't know if they necessarily will or not, but I will not be getting involved in that game. They want the three-peat. I mean, I kind of think you're right about that. Like I mentioned on my previous show this week, I said that the narrative that probably makes sense as far as like this is the narrative we want to push would be the three-peat narrative, which, by the way, one NFL team has three-peated, but it was before the Super Bowl era. The Green Bay Packers three-peated, I think, like right before the Super Bowl era started. Green Bay won 3 straight championships, so I think at least 2 of them were at Lambeau Field. And one of them was the Ice Bowl against Dallas, if my history is correct on that. But there's been no three-peat in the Super Bowl era. Houston is at my Boston Celtics. This is a big game, man. This is, the former Celtics coach, Udoka, for Houston. Houston just lost to Boston back on January 3rd at home. Or no, that was it, right? Yeah. Back on January 3rd at home. That was Boston starting that difficult road trip off on the right foot with a nice, easy win over Houston. So you would expect Houston, they're going to show up for this game against Boston. I mean, Boston's the returning champs. There's the whole coaching aspect of this with, the former coach faces his former team, etc. I mean, they're going to be focused. And there's a little bit of the revenge angle there. They're obviously going to be focused on Boston, but they have to face Boston in a spot where they just swept Cleveland in the home and home, like I just said. So I don't think it's the greatest spot for Houston either, even though they did have rest in between the two games against Cleveland. They're coming off finishing off the home and home against Cleveland on the road. Huge win for Houston. So I don't know that it's really the greatest spot for Houston. They'll still want to show up for this game, but as far as how tired they might be a little bit tired. But then again, Boston is returning home from a road trip, so not a good spot for Boston either. They went out on the road trip. They had another successful road trip going 3-1, having to go to the West Coast, only dropping the game to the Lakers on the back-to-back there. They turn around and they beat Dallas, with Dallas coming off beating OKC again, inexplicably beating a full like a full OKC roster at that time. That made no sense. The Celtics, I was worried about the Celtics in that game, but they took care of business. They were in the bounce back spot at the very least. Dallas did not get their finals revenge. Big win for the Celtics. Now they're returning home. I still think they will be focused on Houston, but maybe not as much because they already did just go into Houston and beat them in Houston on the previous road trip. So it does still look like it's a worse spot for the Celtics to me, even though Houston is in the letdown spot off of Cleveland. But you don't really have a letdown spot when you're playing the Celtics, man. You're still going to show up and be focused. So slight lean to the Houston side in this one. Celtics are down from 7 to 6.5 with reduced juice. 74% of tickets, 93% of the cash on the Celtics, though. So it looks like they have more of the cash percentage on them right now, even though it does look like the line has moved against them a little bit. But yeah, as far as everything I just said, I think the return home spot is the worst of all the situational angles there. So the slight lean would be to taking the points with Houston in that one, that plus the revenge angle. But I won't play it. Memphis is at New York. Pretty big game here between two pretty good teams. Memphis is on a roll right now, although they mostly rolled over some pretty bad teams in here, although they did beat Minnesota in the mix there on MLK Day, so that was a good win. Since then, they've just been rolling, but now they have to go out to New York for a single road game, which is kind of a weird spot, with Houston up next as well, which may be a bit of a look at because Houston was the last team that beat them, and they lost twice to Houston. Houston was the last team they lost to, and it's actually their last two losses were both to Houston, so they actually might have a little bit of focus looking ahead on Houston, man, as good as the New York Knicks actually are. I think this is a weird spot, and it could be a little bit of a momentum stopper almost, even though usually I say when you start a road trip, you want to start off the road trip on the right foot, but this isn't even really a road trip. It's just a single road game, and that's a little bit different, and it's a third game in 4 days, fourth game in 6 days, although all the rest of them were at home, so that's not bad travel-wise really, but still, it's just kind of a weird situation to have one game where you have to go out and play the Knicks. The Knicks did just crush Sacramento, so they might be feeling a little bit high on themselves as well. And they have Denver up next in 2 days. But I don't know if they're going to overlook this Memphis team. It's been really hot. So I do think the Knicks may be the way to look in this game. But the Knicks, the market read looks against it, though. The Knicks are down from 4 to 3.5 with juice. 52% of tickets on them, but 54% of the cash on the Grizzlies. So the market read looks like it's a little bit on the Memphis side. I don't know what to think about that game, really, man, so I will stay away. And then you do have Toronto just beat Atlanta twice on the road. They just went down and beat Atlanta in a back-to-back. Both games wins, kind of crazy, pulling off back-to-back upsets over Atlanta. The zigzag didn't even work, and Atlanta actually did even worse in the second game. Now they're returning home from that to face this New Orleans team who looks like Murray may play. He's a game-time decision in this one. And Ingram is still out for New Orleans, but I do think they will have the rest of the guys. Zion, Murphy, and McCollum should all be there. So I kind of lean to the New Orleans side here, even though it almost looks too easy to take New Orleans when it's just a pick-the-winner price. And we know that New Orleans has like their stacked roster now, so why is it only a pick-em price? Well, partially because it's at Toronto, but I mean, that just seems a little weird to me. But New Orleans is off that horrendous loss that I just mentioned to Charlotte, where they were coming off that big win, that big game, over Memphis where they lost, and it was a back-to-back. So maybe that's part of the reason why they lost to Charlotte there on the back-to-back. So I think it is kind of a bounce-back spot now, but it is still a third game in 4 days, all in different cities. So still not the easiest for them, but it does still look like a bounce-back spot to me for New Orleans and a letdown spot to me for the Raptors. So the Raptors are actually public. 80% of tickets and 53% of the cash on them. The Pelicans have flipped from a 1.5-point dog to a 1-point favorite with juice. So I lean to the Pelicans. The market read looks like it's on the Pelicans. Very strange to see the Raptors being public. Because you would think everybody would know that the Pelicans have all their guys back, and now they're better than the record would indicate that they are, because they were without most of those guys for most of the season. So I don't know. It's just too weird of a read for me. And then we do have Denver at Chicago, which I mentioned because Chicago just returned home from a road trip and didn't do well in that return home spot, even though I thought it was a bad spot for Philly too, because Philly had just beaten Cleveland, so it wasn't a letdown spot. But the return home spot is a strong negative angle, man, and Chicago did not do well in the return home spot. They lost And a lot of times when you don't do well in that first game back, you tend to bounce back in your next game. So Chicago may do just that and bounce back. Big game against Denver. But Denver's coming off kind of a horrendous-looking loss, too, against Minnesota. Even though Minnesota's a good team and you lose by almost 30 to anybody, you're going to be a little bit pissed coming out of that game. So I think Denver is also kind of in a focus spot, so both teams are in this one. Denver's up from 7 to 8.5, but 86% of tickets is only 81% of the cash. So a little bit of the cash working against them, it looks like, in that one. And then Atlanta and Minnesota. Maybe this will be the last game I talk about. I don't know. Atlanta, they just lost twice to Toronto, man. So you got to think they're going to want to bounce back from that. They get to go out on the road, although it is only one game. But at this spot, when you lose at home embarrassingly to Toronto like that, I don't think it's that bad of a spot to just get out of home and go somewhere else and just focus on playing basketball. So I don't think it's that bad for them. Minnesota, meanwhile, just crushed Denver off of beating Dallas, and they do have Phoenix up next. So it looks like a sandwich spot to me for Minnesota. So this is actually the closest to being a play for me besides that New Orleans side. Maybe I would look to take the points with Atlanta here after getting embarrassed on their own floor by Toronto. Minnesota coming off a couple of huge wins, and with Phoenix up next, which is still Kevin Durant, and they're still a hot team, so could be a look ahead there. The T-Wolves are up from 8 to 10, although I don't see any percentages on this, but I would look to take the points with the Hawks in that one. And that's going to do it for me, man. My plays, one more time, are both in college basketball. Iowa +8 with Ohio State being in a letdown spot, and Arizona -1, and what I think is the misleading line of the day spot with Arizona there. Those are my only two plays. Thanks for hanging out, Tim and Just Out. Thanks, guys, and let's have a good one. Let's start the week off right on Monday. Let's go. I did have a winning day yesterday. I'm up on the year. Let's continue it, man. Let's keep it going. Have a good one, guys. Peace. Oh, and Tower Gang, of course. I'm Tower Gang Toad. Follow the Tower Gang podcast, patreon.com/Tower Gang, the most offensive podcast out there, and you can support us there. All right, peace.